When you build a self-governed practice, meaning people there really buy into your vision and they're there to support of it, business should be boring. So I think doctors really fantasize about the day they're going to sell because it does several things. Number one, it helps with that financial freedom. I leveraged my asset. But number two, thank God I never have to do an employee review again because those are grueling.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Reagan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in.
Well, Reagan, we have a special co-host guest with us today, Victoria Peterson. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Thank you for coming and bringing your fun energy and livelihood and soul to this. We love having you in our lives, and so it's fun to share you and cross-pollinate onto this Be Happy podcast. So
I love this Be Happy podcast. I know I may have started it, but the two of you took it to number one.
Woohoo!
So proud.
Well, thank you.
Before we started, Chad and I were talking with Kashmir, the producer, saying there are like the godfather of dentistry. I think I'm the grandmother of coaching.
Wait a second. We just on godmother, not grandmother.
Godmother, definitely.
I'm the godmother. I'm the godmother of it all. So
for the listeners, the joke was going, Victoria was self-effacing, saying she was the great-great-grandmother and stuff like this. It's like, oh, come on. Well, thank you for letting me, like when you first invited me onto the, podcast doing this with you, it was such a cool concept because I didn't do anything like this. It's not like you were borrowing me from the podcast world. You're borrowing me from the dentist world saying, let's get some, young, well, whatever, mid-career, but, like some younger vibe into it with a dentist's perspective. And I had lived the stuff that you guys, were talking about. And not that I've arrived, but, I was closer to having brought someone alongside me as opposed to, Bruce is very relatable for sure, but he's also perfect, and it's tough to be like, man, how do I become perfect like Bruce when it's like, oh yeah, I can be like Chad, it allows for people to come alongside the growth,
I think perfect occurs after many, many years of trial and error and failure and wins. Victoria, I'm so excited that you're joining us for the 150th episode because you have been a hallmark for being very open, transparent, and vulnerable with your successes and your failures, the beautiful broken mess and all of that you kind of get squeezed through and you pop out on the other side and people see that success and you hear people saying, I want to be just like you. And you and I know there's a lot that goes into being just like you. So I'm grateful, extremely grateful that you've given me the opportunity to come in and co-host with Chad so that you could elevate and really get into your wheelhouse of helping doctors create investment grade practices, and much celebration to your own podcast that is How old now? How old is it?
It's 1 year this month.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So for being 1 year, the new kid on the block, as far as podcasts goes, you made it into the top 5 on dental podcasts, top dental podcasts of the year. So congratulations to you as well.
Thank you.
Victoria, Can you give us a rundown? So let's say someone has not heard of investment grade practices. Aside from the obvious name, give us the elevator pitch as far as, what people should be expecting to, come across.
Well, what I love about the podcast model is that I interview a compelling guest once a month, and then I take about It's honestly, it's somewhere between 6 and 15 minutes to then monologue and debrief about that. So I have interviewed, what I'd love to do with investment grade practices is go find the hidden truth. And in all industries, it's almost like a Mario game. You don't know what you don't know until you get to the next level. So being a business owner who has played at many, many levels, from startup and concept to, I don't know if this is going to make it, to successfully selling companies, buying and creating a group of dental practices and leveraging those out. It blows my mind. It's like, oh my God, everybody at level 1 needs to understand the information here at level 5, because they would make better choices. And that's what I hope to help doctors with building an investment grade practice, is to get beyond the day-to-day cash flow roller coaster and those stress decisions that we make in the battlefield, to really looking longer view of, how do I look at my business as one of my primary assets that I'm building? And how do I build other assets like real estate and patient finance portfolios? I was able to create multiple streams of revenue while having a lot of fun doing it. So an investment grade practice should feel great, should support your lifestyle today, with an eye to creating financial freedom. It's your number one vehicle as an entrepreneur for creating financial freedom.
When I hear that, I'm not a dentist and I want to sign up immediately. I'm not kidding. It really applies to any business owner, Victoria. I know that our vertical is strictly dentist, and you've been enormously successful with your own multiple practices and going through that process as well. When I hear that, that applies to anyone with an entrepreneurial spirit, anyone who wants to enjoy life and have that financial freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's disappointing when you get to the end of the line and you think you have what you're going to have, and you find out that might not be the case.
Well, I think it's even sadder is that we never get to the end of the line because we burn out before we get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, trifecta here. How do we go about sharing with our listeners? Here's the good news. We have 3 tips each. And I'm just wondering, do we go around in roundhouse, or do we kind of, have section 1, section 2, section 3? How do you guys want to do this?
I have opinions on this.
I
definitely want to hear from the top. I want to hear the 3 business tips that Victoria could share with our listeners, because they're absolute gold. This is free. This is free advice that people pay thousands for, no joke. And it's and I do have a little hint. She kind of gave me a little hint on what those 3 tips might be, and they are phenomenal. So I would love to start off with Victoria, and then Chad, I'd love to hear your take as the business owner in the practice, how, what your thoughts are about those 3 and what your tips are around that. And I can always weave a magical marketing dance around all of it and tie it all together.
Good. I've got a pen and a Post-it note ready. Victoria, let's hear number 1 first.
Maybe what I could do is give you my 1, 2, 3, and then we can go a little bit deeper, if that's okay, because when you think about the theme of building an investment grade business, an investment grade practice, it's different than business as usual. And I think you'll see why when you see my top 3 tips. So number 1 is know your financial freedom number. How much money will it take for you to live at choice, where you can maintain the lifestyle that you deserve for the next 30 years? So, and we have a formula for that. But number 1, you've got to know your financial freedom number. Number 2, this is a controversial rule of business, but I say business should be boring. That's my number 2 tip. Business should be boring. Your life should be exciting. Business should be boring, and I'll share why. And then number 3, the magic that makes it all work is to invest in yourself and your team. So know your financial freedom number. Business should be boring, and invest in yourself and your team.
Isn't that sexy? That's a sexy little bundle right there. I want to dive into that bundle. Chad, what do you think about those 3?
It was kind of this pause, because I'm like, okay, for the magic investing. So taking notes, because it's good to know the final outcome from day one. What are you working for other than to help heal patients?
Right.
But in a business sense, what's your final goal? And are we working towards the silly, like when I'm 90 years old, I'll retire for 1 year before I die? And that's just not resonating with our age very well, because we saw a generation try that, and it's just okay for some people.
Yeah. This know your financial freedom number. They say you can't connect the dots in your life until you look backwards. So you almost have to go through it, and then you turn around and look backwards. And I think that's what a good guide does, is turns around and says, here's what I discovered, and these were the dots that I connected. So after, I started coaching in 1995. So I don't know how many years that was. I went a long time, maybe 20, 30 years. And what I realized is that I got all of my clients to financial freedom within 10 years. So if you were 35, you were there by 45. If you were 40, you were there by 50. If you were 50, you sure got there before you were 60. And even today, I hear those stories of dentists who are 80 years old who still practice because they just can't financially quit. So oftentimes I see doctors setting goals something like this. I did $1 million last year. If I do $1.1 million this year, that'll feel like improvement. So they set goals based on improvement compared to where they've been. But what if it took 1.2 million to throw off enough profit to really fund your retirement, invest in the practice, and make it grow? You would have been short $100,000 and never knew it. So if you know that you need $7 million in retirement, you know that you have so much in the stock market, so much in commercial real estate, where you've got income outside your practice. Well, the whole difference comes in the value of your business. And the way we value business has greatly changed because of private equity coming into our markets. It's totally different than it was 5 years ago. The pandemic actually accelerated this. And I remember being in my 30s studying financial planning. I was actually studying to be a stockbroker. And then I woke up and said, oh my God, I do not want to manage anybody else's money. I just want to know how to do it. It was too much pressure. But one of my mentors gave me the most golden piece of advice. He said, pay attention to page 16 news. And I had no idea what that meant. And I was like, I smiled, I'm 30. I'm like, all right. And I'm actually picking up, the newspaper. I was in Atlanta, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, page 16. What are they saying? And then I started picking up the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And I noticed page 16 news was very different than the headlines. And this is why your financial freedom number is so important. When you know what it takes for you to be you, you're not persuaded by the new headlines. And the headlines right now say, oh my gosh, if you don't sell your practice today, private equity is going to move out of this market and you will lose the opportunity.
Right.
So many doctors are getting unsolicited offers that say, do it now, do it now. But Dr. David Port, who's on our team, we've created a financial freedom calculator. Swear to God, Chad, you're going to love this. I think you saw it previewed in February. Yes. We can actually put in your collections, your projected growth based on 18 years of historical data. We can show you over the next 5 years what would happen if you sold today versus what would happen if you work towards your financial freedom number with a plan to optimize your business. Every time we run this for doctors, they come out 4-to-1 better on owning their practice rather than selling it. So what I mean is you could sell and get 2.3 million. You could hang on to it, and the cash flow, the profits, and the value, you'd be at 6.2 million. It's that dramatic a difference. But I'm passionate. You can tell because I'm like, if you don't know your freedom number, you will be persuaded by the headline news. You won't know what your true value is. True value, what's really happening in the market, always shows up on page 16, not page 1.
It's that simple, Reagan. I mean,
it's that simple.
Well, I mean, like, it's not like it's like, well, I have questions about that. I mean, you could you could go deeper into it nonetheless, but
Right.
it's that succinct, I guess is what I'm saying. What you just spelled out, Victoria, has a lot more details to it, but at the same time, the concept, there it is.
I got to tell you, Chad, when you and I were podcasting together, or when I started Neighborhood Smiles, I didn't know this. I was working on cash flow. I'm setting aside some good money. I'm pretty sure I could live on a couple million, but I didn't know. I didn't know until I started writing the book, Building an Investment Grade Practice. And I had to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And the compelling question is, if dentists see $1 million a year flowing through their practice and they practice 30 years, you've got access to $30 million. And yet 95% of dentists cannot retire. And that has been a question that has boggled my mind since I got into dentistry in 1980. I'm like, dude, like you're really cash flowing some serious coin, but you can't figure out a way to grab 120 grand a year to live for, into non-working time. So I don't know. That's my compelling why. I've personally experienced bankruptcy within my family. I have personally helped doctors overcome bankruptcy, and it's good people who just weren't given access to the right information. They were great business people, great community people. They just didn't have one or two simple things. And knowing your financial freedom number, that's step number one.
From a marketing standpoint, it's layered, and I think it's complex, Victoria, the way you say it. You say it simply and it makes sense. From a personal standpoint, it's one thing to get your financial freedom number for your own personal element. It's another thing entirely. And we're not running restaurants here, so it's not like the overhead is massive in a dental practice compared. There is profit to be had if you know what you're looking for and how to position it. The bigger element is, what could I be leaving on the table that I'm not aware of? And that is the part that kind of stops my heart in its tracks. I think I get to that point and I'm attracted, to a DSO, or a DSO is attracted to me, or it's down that time to transition. I assume I will get what I'm worth. I assume that I will maybe fight for that value, but I'm not going to be hosed. I will be taken care of. And on one of your recent episodes, Victoria, with Dr. Nikki Green on Investment Grade Practice podcast, I was, really lovingly shocked by taking another look and being a little pragmatic about how you approach the value of your business, how much value she would have been leaving on the table had she sold just a few years prior to that. So that can, put your financial freedom number on rocket boosters.
I could go down a bunny trail. We'll just say, go listen to the podcast, because we talk about that all day long. And everyday doctors are doing this. This isn't some grand scheme reserved just for the top 1% of clinicians, or, top of your class. This is like, you could have been at the bottom of your class in dental school, have average skills and great communication skills, and you can be an investment grade practice.
Good.
If you're being
Chad.
Oh, phew. So you're saying this is for everyday dentists and everyday practices?
This is for that's my hero. I don't live in a mansion. I literally just went back to my parents and saw my family for an Easter reunion, and took my kids to see where I was born and where I grew up. Dirt road is still a dirt road.
Okeechobee.
Farm, the Okefenokee.
One of these times I'm going to get it.
Well, from the marketing standpoint, I can wrap a really beautiful bow around that. My interpretation, Victoria, from listening to you over the last many years now, over 12 years, 13, 14 years, we won't say how long, it makes me think about marketing in an entirely new way. So when we think of marketing for dentists, we think of going out to attract patients. And that's kind of where it stops. I want X patients, I will do this tactic. I've never hadn't thought about marketing to potential buyers, marketing and packaging the practice in a way that would be attractive for a new entity to come in and transition. And that is a whole other strategy in and of itself. And I think you have to get real with yourself. You have to be honest about what your financial freedom number is, and not have any mental baggage around that. Stake your claim. And I think you have to be the exact same way when it comes to the dentistry you want to practice, and how clear you are on your philosophy of care, and how brave you are at being able to package that and market that out to your community. It's going to matter when it's time to transition. Those steps have to be in lockstep, in my opinion.
I think it matters now. And you brought out what is required. That's actually my third tip. I'll go there real quick, is invest in yourself. Yes, you market to your patients, and Chad's done a beautiful job. Your branding on Veranda Dentistry, it allows you to bring your associates in and come into partnership. There's great equity strategies there for you. And the longer you think about this, the sooner you get started, the more tax advantaged it is. If you say, I'm putting my practice on the market and selling next year, there's very little your CPA can do to help you shelter taxes or defer capital gains or avoid them altogether. If you start 8 to 10 years ahead of time, then we get estate planners involved. You may not have to pay capital gains at all. So that's why, and marketing matters. Knowing where you're going matters, because it's not enough to market to patients anymore. That's step one. Step two layer is marketing as an employer. There's such a competition for talent. And this was going before the pandemic. It's just accelerating. So you must be the one that has a waiting list of people who want to come to work for you. You must know how to expand your team using outsourcing and virtual team members and different things like that. And then number three is positioning it for the buyer. So taking those testimonials, reels, and community reels, having a page that says, that is prepared and ready to go. If you're interested in joining our team as a partner, here's the benefits. It's just taking the same message you'd have for the patient and saying, this is the benefit if you're working here as a team member. Here's the benefit if you were to become an owner. But as you know, with marketing, it's all about the packaging. It's all about the branding around it. And Chad, you've got beautiful, but I want to go to work for you. And I don't even want to be a hygienist anymore. But there are days that I go, I could rock it with Shonda. Chandra and I, they're just rocking out.
You're hired. You start Monday. I think I can get you.
Yeah, my license expired, but
I don't need you to have a license. You just
you're
come
in
here.
Iowa. I could be a treatment coordinator. I couldn't be a hygienist anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just everything. This would be, yeah. So, but extracting value out of the practice is more than just the sale and just the DSO purchase and whatnot. I've heard even, occasionally the crazy talk, but I don't think it's actually that crazy, of if you maximize your profitability all the while for the next 30 years or 20 years, 10 years, whatever you have left, that it could be worth more in cash flow and along the way than if you sold it at a certain value that you think is impressive, but it's
Right.
it's not necessary that you could, and the audacious statement is that you could just close the doors and not sell the practice and still have more value because you built that.
That's the truth. That's not
Right.
even an audacious statement. That is a statement.
Well, it comes across to dentists as audacious because the goal is, someday you're going to sell it for a lot of money. And it's just like, what if you just plain old didn't? What if you just, said, here's the keys, see you later. And, and it seems audacious to a lot of dentists. How could you do that? That's your retirement. It's like, no, if you played it right on your budgets and everything like that, and the value that you have the whole while, as opposed to the last 6 to 12 months that you own it, that you could have a lot of cash flow and build up, along those 10, 20, 30 years.
I don't know why this was coming up, but as you were saying it, all I pictured was, that sounds great, Chad, but I'm going to have to live on biscuits for the rest of my life, right? Like it sounds like
Right.
If I impoverish myself along the way, then I could do it, but it's actually the opposite. And that's my third tip. The reason doctors don't get, I call it it's when you build a self-governed practice, meaning people there really buy into your vision and they're there to support of it. Business should be boring. So I think doctors really fantasize about the day they're going to sell, because it does several things. Number one, it helps with that financial freedom. I leveraged my asset. But number two, thank God I never have to do an employee review again, because those are grueling. And, I, as an owner, I really gained a lot of compassion for doctors who were practicing in the practice and running the practice. It's got to be the hardest business model there is. And Chad, I always wanted to ask you this. Do you dread it when somebody comes up behind you and tugs your lab coat or taps your shoulder and says, "Hey doc, can I get a few minutes with you at the end of the day?"
Oh yeah. I mean, that it might as well be your someone that you're dating or whatever. I'd hate to say your spouse, but like someone that you're dating back in the day saying, "I need to talk." It's just like, just don't say that.
Yeah, it's the drama. It's the drama and the unexpected managing team issues, managing patient complaints, managing new regulation. What is this No Surprise Act? And what about the red flag rules? And what about all the PPE and the OSHA and all of this? I think owners become exhausted from the day-to-day management. It just sucks the life out of your clinical joy. Yes. And you got to wake up and
to make light of that when it happens, when someone says, "Hey, can we talk?" You guys listening only, I'll have to explain this, but I go like this. I go, and I just kind of step behind a wall so where they can't see me.
Listeners, Chad is slowly, creepily standing up and slinking away from the camera.
He looks like Steve Carell.
Yeah, they see me. They're like, and Shonda, when she says that, she'll say, "I see you leaving the room," and I'll just be like, "You don't see me.
You don't see." I can't wait for my book to come out, because there's actually a chapter in there about investing in your communication skills. And I take doctors through this journey of the unexpected conversations you get. And it's that unexpected "Can we talk" by the team. Yeah. I'll give you a preview of the book, Chad, because I teach you how to stop, drop, and roll. It's just almost what you do. Like, you just stop and you look at them head on, and you drop your breathing, you drop your tone just a little bit, and you roll into the script, which says, "Absolutely, I would love to meet with you. Right now, I have about a minute or two. Can you share with me what we're going to be meeting about? I want to make sure this is the best use of our time and that I'm in the right place." So then they have 1 or 2 minutes. And then you're still in control of the conversation. You could say, "Wow, you know what? That is a bigger conversation. And I schedule those on Wednesdays. Let's get together with the office manager, get you on my calendar, and I can sit down." So they have certainty. You're going to have the meeting. You're not boxed into a corner of got to do it right now in the hallway. So I can't wait for the book to come out, because it's got the trade show assault when you're there. It's got some fun communication tips for doctors.
Oh, when you're walking down the row of, what you need is a badge that says lab technician instead of dentist on it. So that way you don't get bothered. Holy moly, that's rough.
Yeah. But I think that's what I mean by business should be boring. When you've got the right systems in place and people know these conversations happen in this way, when you can reduce the drama, when you can move from the mental anguish of managing uncommitted people who are taking care of uncommitted patients, that's exhausting. So business, you go from viable, that's when it's just like really chaotic and do this and do that. And the doctor's micromanaging everything because there are no managers. And then you get kind of predictable with these moments of sheer panic. And then you can get into durable. Once your systems are durable, that means they run with or without you, Chad. If you leave the office, no one knows that you're not there in terms of business predictability, except that your winning smile and sense of humor are gone. Like that will always be missed.
Do you know that this year we committed to a moratorium of change? So 2022 is no change. I had some of the sleep apnea people, they called and they said, "Hey, we'd like to, help you get started on implementing this." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can't. We have a moratorium on change this year." And they're like, "Aren't you the decision maker?" And I said, "Oh yeah, but if I enact this, my team is going to have a cow because we've agreed that this is a year of no change. We are going to take what we have and make it the best, like better and the best that we can. And it's kind of this excuse where that's the fall guy, that's the hitman. And I just go, listen, I can't make a change. If I made a change, the team is going to have a cow because we have made an agreement to no change this year. And the salespeople are like, so can I talk with the team? I said, you can try and talk to them, but they are not going to be interested in hearing what you have to say.
You just exemplified all three of those rules, right? You know where you're going. You know what it's going to take to get you there. You're slowing things down so it becomes a little more predictable, which dare I say could be boring. And then you're investing in your team. You're giving them time to catch up and perfect the systems they already have. I think
kind of proud of me, Victoria. I'm
so proud of you. Yeah. I'm sitting up taller in my chair with pride.
That's my hug.
Chad, this is awesome. And because you're the quintessential entrepreneur, like, oh yeah, I am. Location, third location while we're shut down. Why not? Jump in. This is awesome. You're well on your way to maybe never having to sell. And if you do, you got one hell of a practice.
I'm more resolute that that's the case. Cause as you know, I've kind of roller coastered from that one extreme, COVID hitting, selling a practice, and then just being like, you know what? I think I'm going to shrink down and rock this out. And it's paid off so far. It really has been going well for me in that regard. So
I think you're building the kind of business the other myth on Page One News is that young doctors do not want to own their own practice.
Yeah.
And it's the same Page One News that says millennials don't want to be homeowners. They prefer freedom and rent. And the people who are saying that are like Zillow and Redfin, who are
Thank you, Victoria. So not true.
Page 16 says Zillow just expanded its portfolio of starter homes. So who puts out the word that millennials don't want to buy? Why, Zillow does. So this whole BS that young doctors don't want to be owners, I don't buy it. I think they do. And I think they're looking at like practices for like you to partner with. I think this is a worthy message to get out, because I am agnostic against private equity and DSOs. I think they play a necessary role in our organization. They're going to consolidate. It happens. But even at the peak, it's only going to be about 60%, maybe at 70% it unwinds. So 30 to 40% of dental practices into forever will be owned by private practitioners like you. Why not be the best, most profitable, loving, giving place you can be for your patients?
Well, or let's even take it further. Let's say 99% of all offices were private equity / non-solo owner. If still being the 1% is the best option, it doesn't matter that the other 99 are doing it the dumb way.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I mean,
Yeah. And there are platforms to make you competitive. You can get 5 cents off cotton rolls, just like all the big guys. There are ways to get that stuff done.
Well, I mean, listen, not every ma-pa shop can go up against Walmart. We know that. But at the same time, not every shop has closed just because Walmart exists. Meaning, if you know how to be a good businessman, you can still have a bakery that beats Walmart's bakery.
Ooh, like easily.
Well, right. That's the crux of the matter is you can be like, Shaka, is you can be like, Walmart knows how to make the same across the nation of average. We make a better than average. We make a great blank, whatever, apple turnover. So,
well, I think that the dentists that listen to our podcast, we know are entrepreneurial minded in spirit. And that, so when you say, Victoria, and Chad, especially since you're having the moratorium and choosing to stay the course, that can feel boring. That can feel very boring.
I wanted it to.
Good. I'm very, very pleased that you chose to do that, just like Victoria is. I think it's a very smart decision to make. In the skincare world, when you go in to get a facial, if you've ever had a facial, they dump lots of different products on. So they're steaming your face, they're washing your face, they're scrubbing your face, they're putting masks on. And as you are trained in how to give a facial or receive a facial, you have to let the product go on and sink in. You can't just keep slapping more and more product on, or you're not going to get the desired effect. And I think for entrepreneurs in particular, it's so easy to get addicted to what is new, what is the latest and greatest, and constantly chasing that carrot, that we forget that we have to let some things sink in. We have to let our team catch up. We have to let ourselves catch up. So it can, while it feels boring, I know within even PDA, that's the time when we experience great growth. Yeah. We're allowing it to sink in, and then we are being very pragmatic about how we're introducing new innovations and new change. So I am team boring all the way. And I think the same goes for marketing. It can be very addicting to try the latest and greatest and newest marketing technique for your dental practice. And we can also have the tendency to say, well, we've done this forever, so we're just going to change it because we are bored of it. I have seen this ad. Well, doctor, you've seen this ad on social media you've been running because the algorithm has you keyed in. It is your dental practice. Look over at the data. Is the data showing that the ad is no longer performing for you? Is it dropping off, or is it still going strong? If it's still going strong, keep it in the running. Don't stop it. That might feel boring to us, but it's actually getting us great results. So I think marrying that data and really looking at what the actual result is, along with the emotions of wanting to try something new, be it in marketing or be it in the business, that's how I make my decisions for certain. And I know our practices do as well. It's been a nice marriage. So I love your second tip, Victoria. Your business should be boring.
That's straight from Warren Buffett, right?
Of course it is.
If you want to dive deeper into it, you can look up value stocks. So there's a whole strategy for investment around value stocks. And that's what Warren Buffett does. He goes, there is a certain type of business that predictably pays dividends, that always grows within any economy. In fact, in recessions, they're probably more recession proof than others. And dentistry, if you set it up correctly, really falls along that line. You know, you can get off the cash flow roller coaster. You can make your productivity more predictable. You can make your EBITDA more predictable. And it might fluctuate, you know, a percentage point this way or that way. But you've got the cash reserves to come in and invest. And so when you get these templates set up, the boring basics, as Tony Robbins would call it, is what really is the hallmark of value, because it's predictable and it's durable. And that's what Warren Buffett invests in. And so when I was looking up investment grade, I thought, what does that really mean? You know, how does a stock or a bond become investment grade? And you have organizations that say this is a AAA rated bond or a BB rated bond. It tells you the amount of risk that is inherent in the business. So that's what I mean by it should be boring, is you really want to filter out the extremes of risk, and then you're cash ready. So yeah, the marketing program that's working, run it. And you want to introduce something new, take a smaller bucket of money and say, we're going to use this for research and development. So Chad, you'll come out of this moratorium of change where your team feels like, all right, now we're solid. We've gotten back to our core. Our systems are ticking. And then they're going to want to do more. Yes. So that's the next phase for you. How do I introduce innovation back into a steady stream? And so now's the time for you to talk to the people and say, hey, you talk to me. I want to know more about this. Tell me how it went. Let me go read the journal articles. Let me talk to my buddies. And then you decide as a leader, is sleep apnea, you brought that up, is that something that fulfills the passion and mission of my company? Is it something that aligns with the demographic of this area? Is it something that I feel our team could get behind? If you say yes, then you go, what is the investment? What's the training? What's the time frame that I have to invest in this to get them up to speed? When and how would I get the team ready for that so that they have the choice in timing of it? And now we're ready for that next piece of innovation. So boring doesn't mean non-innovative. It means strong at your core and having a plan for innovating. You know, even the innovation becomes somewhat boring because it's planned and vetted.
Well,
Mhm.
it reminds me of fasting. Just because you're fasting doesn't mean that you aren't thinking more and more about your next meal.
Right. But if you don't want to come out and have a fat burger the minute that you come out of a
Ouch.
fast,
Right.
you don't want that to feel deprived.
Well, because so you want to plan.
You want to plan. Yeah. Then
Yeah.
I'm going to go do this when I come out of
Yes.
when I break the fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of fasting isn't that you will never eat again. It's no, I'm fasting for right now. Yeah.
Reason.
Victoria, you kind of touched on your third tip. What is your third business tip?
Oh, that was invest in yourself and your team. So know where you're going, your financial freedom number, what does this business need to do for you in context of your life? Make your business so predictable that it feels somewhat boring, and smile every time you feel that way, and go live your life, go climb a mountain, get on a bike, go bike Glacier Mountain and
Live
know
aloha.
live aloha, and then invest in yourself and your team. They're really head for head. There is no greater return on investment for your money. So people always ask me, if I had an extra $10,000, what would you do with it? I said, I would reinvest it back into PDA. I'd reinvest it into my dental practices far before I'd put it into Wall Street, if I knew there was a room to grow. So I may take that money and automate something. I may hire a new person. I may retool a product or design, something like that, always with the intention of, how do I make this better for the customer? How do I make it better for the patient? So if I had $10,000, I'd look at, how do I make this service better so that it would drive even more business here, which decreases all my fixed overhead and increases my profit. So a $10,000 investment in your business could yield $100,000 or $200,000 profit. It's hard to get that 10x in Wall Street. You and I, Reagan, we were just looking at our ROI on consulting recently. Minimum, it's 7-to-1.
Mhm.
So if you spend 30,000, you're getting 250,000 back. A lot of our doctors are getting 21-to-1. It's hard to get 210% return in Wall Street. Now, there was a great run up. I mean, I promise you, I benefit. I pulled money out of the market. I sat there, and then when it dropped to 23,000, when the Dow was at 23,000, I poured money back into it, and it's up at 35,000 now, 34. So every day Pete's like freaking out. Oh my God, the stock market dropped. Unless the stock market drops back down to 23, I'm okay.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
very conscious about how that works, as well as how the company works and where we're investing.
What are some of the key investment, like specific investments you made as a dental practice owner that you think got you great ROI?
The first was technology. I bought practices that still had dip tanks for their x-rays.
Oh, wow. Really? The dip tanks?
Yeah, they still had like analog panoramic machines and things like that. And they had soft dent. Oh my gosh, their soft dent was like 12 versions out of date. So
I can smell the dip tank. I can smell it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we transitioned the dark rooms into patient education areas where we had microscopes and could talk about bacteria. That was something that was a big passion, was to get all the offices up to the level of oral systemic health.
Yeah.
And once we started showing patients the bacteria in their mouth, like perio, boom, through the roof. Once perio was through the roof and people were getting healthy, then they got more conscious of, but why are my teeth yellow and this is Wisconsin, right? They don't mind, teeth look like cheese. It's okay. But they all now wanted cosmetics. They wanted bigger things. So I think it was technology that made our teams' lives easier. So the handoffs were smoother, and it enhanced diagnostics. That was step one, is how do we get better diagnostics?
Nothing can beat that visual of seeing that little spirochete or whatever it's called, that little critter. I had it done a few years ago, and I tell you what, I waited. I was like right there by the screen, like, do I have those little buggers? And when they pulled it up, the relief I had, I was so proud that I didn't. But then there are smiles that look physically wonderful, and yet you have it. So it's extremely powerful visual tool. That makes sense to me that you would invest in that for sure.
That wasn't a day one investment.
Mhm.
That was probably like year 3 when we got to that point, but just the fundamentals. What are we tracking? What are we reporting? How do we make it easier for the team? And who's the guy that started FedEx? Kinko, who started Kinko's? Paul. Anyway, they called him Kinko. His motto was always kiss the knuckles.
All or failure.
There you go, Paul.
Always kiss the knuckles?
Always kiss the knuckles of the fingers that touch the cash register.
Oh, sure.
So, doctors, what that means is survey your team and ask this question: what would make it easier for you to do your job? What is it that stresses you out today? And then go about fixing those things, because it really is about how your team can, the better they feel about their job, the better they're going to promote you in the marketplace. So what holds you back from asking for a referral? What holds you back from recommending our treatment? I know so many doctors, they've never performed any dentistry on their team. And that's a great marketing opportunity. Once they know you're a good guy who can give an easy injection, then it's easy to say, I trust my doctor. So that's what I mean by invest in your team. Make sure their dentistry is great. Make sure they know you're a great clinician. There's 1,000 tips, Reagan. It's probably a whole podcast on what's your tips. I'd love maybe call back some of your popular guests and say, what are your tips for investing in your team? How do you elevate them and their leadership and their skills?
The investment that I would definitely recommend is anything centered around communication. I think communication is the easiest thing to overlook, because we're all speaking to each other. So we all automatically assume that we know what each other is saying. And that really transfers out to the market for better or for worse. So making sure that messaging is consistent from what's being shouted out through marketing internal. I have seen that. I've seen PDA, build a business on that, and how we communicate together and how we communicate with the patient. So I would definitely make the recommendation of investing in their own skill set so they can rise to the level of subject matter expert in their specific field, and then how we communicate with each other to accomplish the mission. Chad, what about you?
Boom. It's interesting because like some of those ideas tied in with one of mine that I will share, down there and stuff, but learn then execute. It's, so many doctors spend a lot of time learning, but then when you actually ask them, it's like, are you doing anything about it? Even people that might go to the workshop and it's just like, are you scheduling to production? Well, and it's just like, okay, well then, I don't know if it was a waste of money then, waste of time, or if you just had a good time versus, just doing something, like kind of stumbling and just getting going, like get it executed, get started, just start. And then you can recalibrate, if it's like, if you're trying to go straight and you kind of veer off to 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, it's like, well, at least start making a smidge of progress. I'm not encouraging shooting from the hip per se. But at times it's just like, listen, you've been pointing down range. It's time to pull the trigger. It's like, it's okay, miss the bullseye and then figure out how to, hit it next time better. So these were all great stuff, Victoria. And I appreciate you sharing your heart on the investment grade practices. And I thought it was neat to tie in my story about how business should be boring, and how one of the jokes we have at my office, I've told you before, is that the only constant that we have is a change, and we're always changing. Some offices probably do need to change, so this isn't a panacea for everyone that, well, Chad said a moratorium and we've never changed anything in 10 years. So we're going to do a moratorium for 20 years. Like that's not my point. But for the doctors that are the type that are listening to this, they could have a fast for 6 months and just say, you should see the sigh of relief on my team. I was like, you don't have to look so happy that that I'm giving it a rest for 12 months. They're just like, these 12 months are going to go too fast. So, but nonetheless, thank you for joining us today and kind of sharing these ideas. And they're not just ideas to be like, oh, well, isn't that neat? But it's the life or death on whether our legacy will play out well or not. if we're implementing that. I mean, the gravity of this is actually very deep. This isn't just, oh, well, that's a neat thought. Will you look at that? It's like, it's not a, will you look at that? So thank you.
Take control of your story or somebody else will.
There's the marketing side. So Victoria, on behalf of all the listeners and our 150th episode of Everyday Practices, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I'm so proud of this podcast. I'm so proud of what the two of you have done and all the stories that you showcase. Everyday people are doing extraordinary things in this industry, and your podcast helps to highlight that. And you don't have to be extraordinary to build an investment grade practice. You just need to have the discipline to create the plan and see it through.
Right. And just go. Reagan, what are your thoughts 150 episodes in?
I'm grateful for this episode. It's going to be amazing, as I say, for all of us. Thank you for sharing your heart, Victoria, and your knowledge with everyone. And, you're making a great impact, and you're supported by a team who is happy to be on that mission as well. So thank you for being our guest and founding member of Everyday Practices podcast. Until next time, Chad. Doctor, do you feel like scheduling, team drama, and case acceptance are holding you back from the success you deserve? Hi, I'm Reagan Robertson, President and CMO with Productive Dentist Academy and host of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. The reality is, these pebble in the shoe type issues can really ruin the way you feel about dentistry and leave you wishing that there was just a better way. At PDA, we believe you deserve to love what you do, and we've helped thousands of dentists learn how to schedule productively, comprehensively diagnose and treatment plan, and calibrate teams for success. You deserve the same chance to make a few simple shifts that can equal hundreds of thousands in growth for your practice. We are bundling our best value ever, so you are guaranteed success. Register for the Productivity Workshop happening September 22nd to 24th in Frisco, Texas, and you will receive a 2-hour comprehensive business advisory session so you can start increasing your revenue today and get 12-month access to PDA on demand after you attend so you can make sure your goals become reality. To reserve your seat, go to www.productivedentist.com/workshop now. That's productivedentist.com/workshop. This workshop is already 50% full, so register today to secure your seat. One last time, visit www.productivedentist.com/workshop now. We'll see you there. Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.